Good evening, and it's another Friday, and it's 5 o'clock. Welcome to Supreme Leverage. My name is Olubukola Adewoyi, and I'm the CEO of Supreme Education Foundation School. So, like we do every week, it's always interesting. We always bring in the topic and the discussion for the week. This week, we're going to be discussing about staying safe, and you would agree with me, it is very apt for this season, building a culture of safety consciousness. And we always have the best with us. You might have missed last week, the week before. I would advise that you subscribe to our page, to our YouTube channel. And on Facebook, you can always go back and catch up on every other one that you've missed. But before we do, like we always do, we will be going to the studio with Oluwakemi Adesanya for the news. And by the way, it's Oluwakemi's birthday today. Happy birthday, Kemi. We're excited to have you at Supreme Education Foundation School. You're simply one of the best. Happy birthday to you. And over to you, Oluwakemi Adesanya.
News. Here's the news across Nigeria. SEF resumption. Supreme School has resumed third term officially online as a school. We offer cutting-edge learning opportunities that are uniquely personal and specifically designed for our students. Your children can learn from home with the flexibility you want, and you get the support your children need to succeed. Supreme has an online learning option fit for every kind of student. Join us now quickly. Federal government reverses school resumption, withdraws from WAEC. The federal government has reversed its earlier decision to reopen schools. It has also withdrawn students of Unity schools from the West Africa Senior School Certificate Examination scheduled for August and September. The examination was initially postponed indefinitely to check the spread of COVID-19. Speaking with the House correspondents at the end of the virtual Federal Executive Council meeting presided over by President Muhammadu Buhari, Mr. Adamu, Minister of Education, said schools under the control of the federal government will not participate in the examination. And here's traffic diversion plan for Third Mainland Bridge partial closure. The federal and Lagos state governments have announced a traffic management plan for the partial closure of the Third Mainland Bridge, which will last for 6 months. At a joint media briefing on Tuesday, Mr. Kayode Popola, the federal controller of the works in Lagos, said the routine maintenance of the bridge will be carried out from July to January 2021. Mr. Popola said the repairs will be done in 2 phases. He said the first phase of the diversion will be on the Oworoshoki bound lane of the bridge, which repairs would last for 3 months. He said the phase 2 of the diversion for the repairs of the Lagos State bound lane of the Third Mainland Bridge will be from Oworoshoki to Lagos Island on the Oworoshoki bound lane. Nigerian domestic flights resume amid pandemic. Airports in the capital, Abuja, and the commercial hub Lagos have reopened after 3 months of coronavirus restrictions. Domestic flights in Nigeria have resumed after 3 months of COVID-19 restrictions. Other airports are due to resume flights over the next week. And here are 5 online tips for keeping in touch with the people you care about. Keeping in touch sometimes requires conscious effort. We meet a lot of people physically and virtually. Today, as we embrace the new norm of working remotely, staying at home and practicing social distancing, staying close to those you care about can be a challenge. Technology can be of help. And here are 5 tips that will help you keep in touch with those you care about. And these are video calls or meeting, play online games, share videos, keep track of events, and share photos. And this is the world news. Oil prices drop as US COVID-19 cases surge, raise demand concerns. Oil prices fell on Tuesday, erasing earlier gains on fears that the recent spike in COVID-19 cases in the US could affect the recovery in oil demand. US West Texas Intermediate crude futures dropped 0.64% to $40 per barrel, while Brent crude futures fell to $42. And in contrast, the price of Nigerian crude grade is on the increase. Bonny Light rose to $43. The crude oil outward will increase slightly in August as 7.7 million barrels per day would be cut off global supply. A US student visa. A lot of people are scared for the future. The spread of coronavirus has led to major challenges for higher education across the world, with many institutions embracing virtual tuition as a way to allow students to continue the learning. But US immigration authorities have now said that the international students whose courses move fully online this autumn could face having their visas revoked. An adversary said that unless students switch to courses with face-to-face tuition, they could be deported. This decision has caused uncertainty and fear for hundreds of thousands of international students who rely on student visa in the US. And this is the quote for the day. Difficulty is what wakes up the genius within us. I am Oluwakemi Adesanya, and over to you, Mrs. Adeoye.
Thank you very much, Kemi. We are worried about what will be the outcome of the foreign students, but it only means that we would have a lot to embrace as here and what we do. Thank you very much for that. So we will be bringing on board Mrs. Ugochi Obiedugu. She is a social development strategist with specialty in creating products, programs, and policy advisory that solves Africa's pressing development issues affecting the African child and youth. And major work pillars are ensuring child safety and reducing substance abuse in youths. She engages in safety advocacy, the Train Them Young initiative. One of her projects has taught safety skills to over 7,000 pupil students in Nigeria and in Ghana. Wow. She's the author of the illustrated child safety storybook series, The Adventures of Mona, which can be purchased on Amazon and is currently sold in 11 states in Nigeria and 8 countries. This is fantastic. During the pandemic, like I told her backstage, she has been really busy. She released a child safety story booklet on the coronavirus for African children. This booklet has been distributed free to 1,000 children in 6 states. That is a lot. She also developed a safety education hub to connect parents and educators with relevant safety tips on the go. This is beautiful. Her work has been profiled on the Tony Elemole Foundation blog. She leads Africa, Bella Niger, European Network Education and Training in Occupational Safety and Health website, foreign and local newspapers, radio and TV. Ugochi Obiedugu is committed to introducing innovative programs and products that enhances social development in young people. This is fantastic. Please join me this evening and welcome Mrs. Ugochi Obiedugu. Thank you so much for coming on Supreme Leverage.
Thank you very much, Mark, for that beautiful welcome. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for making our time. So like we say, we do all the time, we always bring in the best. And today we're discussing staying safe and building a culture of safety consciousness. So like I always advise people, have your pen and a paper by you and your notebook so that you take on board as much as possible. You take down notes, and please feel free throughout to send us questions, to ask us questions, and so that we can, this is live, and she can respond to them immediately. So Miss Ugochi, what does it entail staying safe?
Okay, so basically, staying safe is about being free from danger and from harm. It's basically the things you're going to do to ensure that your environment is rigged in a way that you're going to reduce avoidable accidents as low as is reasonably practicable. So anything you can do in your home, in your school, in your workspaces to ensure that the risk of injury, the risk of death, the risk of accident is greatly reduced. That would ensure safety of everyone within that space.
So for this particular season, knowing it's all about the pandemic, it's all about coronavirus, what will it entail for us to be safe?
So for this period of the pandemic, there are four major things that everyone must always bear in mind to ensure that they are safe. The very first one is hand washing. We cannot rule out hand washing in these times because this virus is not friendly with soap. So as long as you wash your hands with soap and water properly, you are safe. And then, of course, when your hands are not visibly dirty, but you are not certain of the places you have touched, you can also use hand sanitizers. The next one is you must ensure that you're using a face covering. Face mask is very important at this time. And of course, that is why we've had several governments say before you go to a public space, it is now compulsory for everyone to put on face mask. The next one is social distancing, or some people call it physical distancing. But that simply means that as much as possible, you need to keep a space between yourself and the next person. In these times, you've got to take personal responsibility, because I understand that with people moving about on the street, a lot of people have relaxed their guard. So everyone has to take that conscious effort to ensure that physical distancing, social distancing still happens. And then the last but not the least is cleaning and disinfection of surfaces more frequently. So because this virus can last, according to some research, 2 to 4 days on surfaces, while some other research says 2 to 7 days. This means that we must clean more often. And the proper way to clean is after cleaning with soap and water, then we also wipe with a disinfectant. So it's really important that we embody these four things. If every Nigerian, if everybody everywhere in the world is doing this four things, to a really large extent, we would all be fine.
Okay, but then there's been a lot of controversy around the issue of face masks as well, of it not being so safe. And when I mean not being safe, I'm not talking about the hygiene now. For asthmatic patients, it's affecting their respiration. So I've seen people walking or their children on bikes or they're on bicycles and they have their face mask on. And I'm thinking, is it wise? Because they're not able to breathe in and out properly. It reduces the amount of oxygen that goes down. So what do you say about this? I actually personally believe the face shields work better because you're able to breathe in and then it still protects you from the other person. Or is it that the face mask is more protective than that?
Okay. So according to the research that WHO put out recently, WHO says that using the face shield alone is not sufficient. If you must use the face shield, you must still use the face mask. Now, what I can say about the face mask is, as much as possible, let's try to use breathable ones. There are all sorts of face masks now, and some people, the padding is too much, so breathing is a challenge. So as much as possible, we're supposed to use breathable material, the ones that are lighter weight, but still give you the right amount of protection. And then for those who have difficulty breathing, I would also advise that as much as possible, if it is not necessary, they should restrict going out to crowded places, restrict movement. So if you can take certain meetings, engage in certain activities online, by all means do so that the times you would need to go out to be few and far between. And as we all know in safety, when your exposure to something is reduced, to a large extent, you are safer than if you are constantly exposed.
Yes.
So if you know you're not breathing properly with a mask, if you reduce the opportunities for you to wear your mask, that's reduce opportunities to go out. To some extent, you'd be better off the few times you would now have to step out wearing the mask.
Okay, I mean, you mentioned a very important fact when you were talking about a lot of people have reduced their guards now because we're going now because of the lockdown has been lifted. And I don't know if you've seen the a video recently that went viral. Someone that a guy that just opened at a housewarming party about 2 weeks ago in Atlanta, and then died about 3 days ago. So actually contracted the virus at the party. So I think the fact that we are all out there somewhere there at the back of our mind, it seems as if, oh, well, so Corona is over now. We are all eager to get back to life. And I also think it has a lot to do with our mental health. Everybody has been on a lockdown for so long, and they just want to be out of this. They just want life back and everything. So what would you say about the effect on mental well-being and our social well-being as a whole?
So in fact, what you just mentioned now is so important, because a lot of people have been at home for too long. That need for social interaction is more heightened. People have come down with all sorts just because they stayed indoors for long period. So any opportunity to go out, they really want to take advantage of this. While that is understandable, we must ensure that even as we go out, we are taking the right precautions, because we do not want to be a statistic. You do not want to go out, have fun, and then you die. Imagine this story. Now imagine after having a beautiful party and you are happy, and then suddenly this thing is happening. So mental health is really important now, because a lot of people got to stay with themselves alone. So people who have never handled their personal issues, they got to see that, oh, there are some things that are not right inside here, right? Those who are living with family members who have not settled some scores, realize that, oh, I do not have a good relationship with this person.
Yes.
So those things, everybody had to basically face their fears this period. And so what I would say is, for mental health, we must ensure that people get help. So if you realize that you are not doing fine, you must speak up. Because you see, when people's mental health is at risk, what happens is it leads to depression, it leads to suicidal thoughts, and even eventually suicide. So when people's mental health is not top notch, it makes them to take unsafe decisions, which could endanger their lives. So I would advise that if you feel you are not doing great in terms of your mental health, look around your network. Who can you speak with? You must speak with someone, right? Then if you find that maybe you are not the kind of person that wants to speak to someone, you don't want your business out there, embrace the art of journaling. Journaling is a way of transferring what is inside here onto a sheet of paper. Once you do that transfer, what happens is you feel a bit lighter, because you have taken everything out of your head space. Then I would also advise each and every one of us, when people come to you and they share a burden with you, don't just dismiss it and say, man up, and all those kinds of things we like to say around here. No, provide a listening ear. And you are not, the person is not telling you to solve the problem, because most likely you may not be able to solve it. But even that act of listening, that act of being warm and being friendly is helpful. And then that would now lead to you referring maybe to a professional, so that things are now done better. But at least that initial feeling of warmth, of acceptance, that person needs it to be able to go to the next stage. So I believe that if we're all able to, impute these things, to some extent, it would help us to thrive in this period.
Okay, then that brings me to one of the major pillars of your work, which is ensuring child safety and reducing substance abuse in youth. Is this something to be worried in this season, considering the fact that our youths are at home? They've not had that much opportunity to socialize, to stay above, which is one of the things that I believe promotes the use of substances. But now that they are at home, do you think it's anything to be worried about? I know that I heard a lot about them improvising on things in the house and everything to use. Is this something that you think parents need to be aware of and watch out for in this season where we are at home with them and they are bored? And I mean bored in capital letters.
Yes, honestly, this is actually one of the challenges in these times, because a lot of the parents themselves are still grappling with it. So they may not even be in the right frame of mind to manage their children properly,
true.
right? So yes, this is one of the risks at this time. Many children are going to experiment. And the reason they would experiment is due to peer pressure. So if they are the ones that already have mobile devices, or they are living in apartments that have other children around, and maybe later in the evening, people just come out in little groups and all that, knowledge will be shared. So if your child has lived a sheltered life, for example, but you have not taught them something, and then your child now goes to start hanging out with these other people who have questionable character, there's going to be some transfer. Now, This is why we must always ensure that before something happens, we equip our children. We must make a conscious effort of grooming resilient children who can take decisions even when we are not there. So you need to let them know, what are you supposed to do? If a fire were to start in this house, what are you supposed to do? If somebody tries to bully you online, what are you supposed to do? If somebody tries to offer you drugs, what are you supposed to do? You know, take them through the process so that by the time they encounter these things in real time, because a conversation has been had before, it's easier for them to act. But what happens is many times the children encounter it first. They don't even know how to act because nobody has told them.
Yes.
And then sometimes they make the wrong decisions. So by the time you are now telling them, it's almost like, you know, how we say medicine after death. So it's really important that we put out information to our children first. Make it conversational. Make your home a fun place where the children can share experiences, gist with you. That would make it easy for them to talk when certain things begin to happen. Because again, this is the period where many children have gotten molested right in the homes, right on their premises. Because that conversation was not had. So we must try to do something about it now by beginning to have those conversations, equipping them so that going forward, when they find themselves in certain situations, they'll be able to act.
Okay, so for those particular ones that they are actually quote unquote the bad influence, they already aware of all the substances, what to use and everything, and they're not getting their usual access to those things, and then they are improvising in the home. What should they be? And then for some parents, I also think this is an opportunity for them to know if their children are, some parents have no clue that their children are using substances, but being at home with them in the last 3 months might be an opportunity for them to detect some things, to know something. What should they watch out for? Because already I want to assume that for the children to be using the substances, then they do not really have a relationship. And so they've missed out on the part of where you prepare your child to say no. So this particular set of children are actually above the issue of say no, this is how you respond to this. They're actually already in it already. So some of them are even going through withdrawal symptoms because they're not gaining access to it. What should the parents watch out for in this season, especially those with youths?
So what I would say to parents at this time is, when you have such kinds of children, there is something called future orientation. Future orientation is like a conversation you are going to have with your youth where you discuss with them. So what do you want to be in future? Who are the people you admire? What are the things you like? Then they tell you. Then you now try to help them plot a graph on how what they're currently doing now is not going to lead them to that outcome, and letting them know the other things that can be done that will lead them to that outcome. Now, when practicing, when you help them go through that process of visualizing through that future orientation conversation, it helps them see that there is a difference between what they are saying they want and what they're actually doing. Now, again, we also have many mental health practitioners have actually opened online platforms to also help parents. So, for example, I know that there's one of my colleagues, Aisha Abdullahi, who runs the Sunshine series, and they've done tons of sessions online, reaching out to various kids and trying to help them through this process. And I know there are many others like that. So the parents should first of all try to establish that friendly rapport, have this future orientation conversation with them, then connect them to help. Because there are actually different stages of these things. And when they work with the mental health practitioners, they're able to fit them in the right category and start them on a sobriety program. Yes. So yes, they have to first of all let the child know that, okay, I don't hate you. Because I know that there is a tendency for parents to look disappointed, act disappointed. Your child is watching how you are reacting. If the reaction oozing out of you is always negativity, they might shut down. They might not want to say more, and you would not be able to reach a child that has shut down. So you've got to try. I know it's upsetting, it's hurting. You might even feel like you have failed, but do your best to still establish that rapport, keep them close, find a way to still keep them close, find mutual things that would connect you, create a mutual hobby, something that would make you connected with them, then connect them to professional help.
Thank you for that. So, I would go to the education sector, which is school, which is what the sector we represent, or even for the families as a whole. How do we build a culture of safety consciousness? And when I mean safety, so I'm talking about it in every ramification of the world, in all its totality. How do we build that culture? Because like you were talking now, you talked about when there is a fire. I mean, I can't imagine how many Nigerian homes prepare children for when there is a fire. This is what you need to do. This is the exit points, even in the house. It's not really part of our culture. It's not something that we do. But then there is a necessity for things like that.
I agree. So the first thing in this area would be education, self-education. Everyone, every family must go that extra mile of educating themselves on safety at the basic. Educating themselves on what are the things that they need to know. So for example, I normally say during some of my sessions that you should have family safety meetings where you just make it an interactive conversation and you teach them on an aspect, not everything. Teach on an aspect, let them know. So this is what we are learning today. These are the rules that are derived. And then you ask questions so that they would respond. Because when you ask children questions and they respond back to you, you are able to gauge if they actually picked what you share. And so when there are mistakes in their responses, that is your chance to correct it. And then by the time you do these kinds of meetings from time to time, what that means is that over a period of time, they would have learned different things. So when we're talking about education, you should cover all areas of safety. And good enough, Google is there. There are tons of information. I have an app that has all sorts of information also. So as much as possible, parents must go out there, look for information, and begin to teach their children. So this week, we're going to talk about preventing molestation. What are you going to do if somebody tries to touch your body? Or if somebody tries to ask you certain kinds of personal questions like, has anybody kissed you before? Are you a virgin? Let's talk about boundaries. Now, when you have those kinds of conversations with them and you let them know, so if this happens, this is how you're supposed to act. And then you ask questions, they respond. The next week, another topic. Before you know it, over a period of time, they would have gained so much. And you keep asking questions because, again, repetition deepens the impression. Don't just say because you have taught them today, it's all over. No, we have to continue. So first of all, it has to be education. They need to know what to do in a fire. If somebody faints in this house, what are we supposed to do? If someone is no longer breathing, can we do CPR? They need to learn all those things. And then the next one is that degree of personal responsibility. Many times, people have learned what they are supposed to do. People have been informed on what they are supposed to do, but do they go the extra mile to actually do it? Many times not. This is why, even though the government has said before you go to a public space, you must put on your mask, we still have people who are walking around without masks. And when you ask them, they tell you, there's no coronavirus. Do you know anybody that has died of coronavirus? Do you know? So it's
very true.
It's a funny situation, right? And because of that, they are not complying. But you see, when government has put laws in place, when government has set up systems, if the human beings do not do what they are supposed to do, they are going to get into trouble. So we must take that personal responsibility. Then I would also say something else that can help that culture is our religious places of worship. So many times, because we are very religious people in this part of the world, when you tell them, you need to do this so that nothing will happen to you, they would say, God forbid, it's not my portion. But you see,
I reject it.
I reject it. Now, the thing is, it's true that God protects. I believe so much in God, and I know that God protects. However, God has given us wisdom to pick knowledge and use it. So our job is also to make use of that knowledge so that nothing would happen to us. I remember before the lockdown kicked off, I went to do my nails somewhere. And I had to ask the lady, I said, they're talking about coronavirus and you are doing nails for people, you're fixing eyelashes. How are you going to protect yourself? And do you know what this lady said to me? She said that the coronavirus will stop at the door of her salon. I'm serious. So that tells me that even though people keep hearing these things, they are not taking action.
Yeah.
And that is because they feel God would protect. It's not happen. So our religious organizations also need to help us, because many times people believe what their pastors and their imams say compared to what some other persons are saying. So from the pulpit, they need to be hearing that, yes, God is going to protect you, but make sure you're taking safety precautions. So that is going to help to balance out the messaging the government is putting out there. And then I'd also say that the government agencies should enforce compliance, because now we know that some businesses have been allowed to open and there are certain rules they are supposed to meet. The agencies responsible for monitoring should ensure that they check, and if people are not doing the right thing, sanction them so that people do the right thing. Because the truth is, if we do not manage this properly, things might get worse with the way people are being complacent about their safety. So everyone must be on top of their game.
So in light of all of this, what do you think about schools resuming? Do you think it's wise at this point for schools to resume back, considering the fact that it's very difficult to manage children? What is your take on this?
Okay, so I do not think that schools will resume now, because I do not think we are fully ready to put all the structures in place. Because the thing is, even though some schools might be able to afford the necessary paraphernalia, put all the systems in place, what about the schools who cannot afford it? I've been privileged to do trainings for teachers across different kinds of schools in this country, the low-cost schools, the public schools, and then the highbrow schools. So I have seen all parts of it. So I know that some people would get things right, but not everybody will. So are we going to say children that go to certain kinds of schools can go while the others do not go? That would not be fair to any child, because it's not their fault that they were born into certain circumstances. So yes, our schools are not ready. What I would advise is other opportunities, other alternatives should be used to ensure that learning continues. I do not think it is wise for children not to learn at all. I remember I was on an IG live with a Ghanaian some weeks ago, and one lady wrote in the comment section that her child is not going to any school until September 2021. That is a long time. That is a long time for your child not to interact with any learning. So this is why schools must rise up to the challenge of using alternative means of sharing education, so that the children are not totally just left behind. You know, we have to ensure that they move on, because if other countries of the world are adapting and ensuring that children are getting education, we must ensure that ours are not left behind. We really must ensure. And so different schools must understand what works for me. Is it WhatsApp that is going to work in taking education to the children? Is it delivering lesson packs to their homes? Is it Telegram? Is it YouTube? Whatever that is, you need to find it. Don't copy what one school is doing, because the truth is, what a particular school is doing may not suit your own school's context. I always love to talk about context. You cannot do copy and paste. You must understand your audience, what is easily available to them, and then create your solutions around that.
Yeah, because we all have different parents and then we have different needs. So it's actually putting up a structure, something that works very well with your parents and they can easily adapt to. Thank you for that. So what do you think, what cultures, now you've mentioned some of it, but I want you to be able to, so that we can focus more on it. I mean, I've learned that I'm talking about cultures now that hinder safety. So one of it is actually religious perception is one of our cultures that does in these things. Responsibility is one of it, being responsible for ourselves. Are those the major hindrances to the culture of safety in Nigeria, would you say?
We also have ignorance. Some people just don't actually know, and they are not even interested in knowing. So there's just this blatant ignorance, like, you know, they say what you don't know won't kill you. Or they say African man. You know, we have all these funny things. You know, so that ignorance, and you know, sometimes they're even so confident in their ignorance that that's a problem. And then there's also this lackadaisical attitude that we have. You know, this, it's not my business. If it's not affecting me directly, it's not really my business. But what we forget is that the action or inaction of others can unintentionally harm us. So imagine you are in this apartment there are 4 flats in an apartment, right? And your neighbor, you are very safety conscious. You know all what you are supposed to. You even have a fire extinguisher. You know how to use it. But you have a neighbor who has no clue about things like that. And the person started cooking and then went into the system room, started pressing phone. From 5 minutes on Instagram, it became 1 hour. Fire started in the kitchen. Next thing, the apartment is burning. Next thing, because that person does not know how to use a fire extinguisher, it begins to spread and it's coming to your own apartment. So at the end of the day, you get to suffer for something that had nothing to do with you. So, but imagine that such a person had maybe said to the residents in the estate, maybe they have a WhatsApp group. In our meeting this month, let's learn about fire because, you know, if it happens, it can affect all of us, and then carries everyone along. That would make a difference. So we can't keep on doing, it's not my business, so that they will not say I'm too forward, so they will not say I'm a busybody. That attitude is going to cause more harm than good. If everyone is more proactive, to some extent, we'll all be fine. So that lackadaisical attitude is something that must be really cropped as much as possible.
Wow. So I like the fact that I said the action or inaction of others can ultimately affect you. So it's also with the issue of the virus. Somebody is careless, comes back into the house, and then everybody begins to. And also, what I've learned about it as well is that some people are actually asymptomatic about it. They don't show any symptoms. They are carriers. They're fine. Their immune system have been able to fight it, and so. But despite that, they still have the virus in them and they are able to pass it on. And so if we are not conscious and we are not keeping safe around such people, we are bound to catch it from them and then think that we are safe. Meanwhile, the virus is there and our own body might not be strong enough to fight it off as theirs is. So yes, ignorance is something to be aware of. So you've talked about us so I want to go into counterculture measures now to be put in place to ensure safety in schools and at home. What are the measures that we can put in place? What are the structures that we can put in place?
Okay, so I would say training. Training is so important, and training can happen at home, in the family meeting, and it can be a structured training in school. So for example, when I visit schools and I'm teaching children, when I visit primary schools, all I have to do is just bring out, let me think, my storybooks. I just bring out my storybooks and then I read a chapter to the children and I ask them questions because it is a story and it is a story that they can relate with. They understand and they're able to answer back. There's a particular chapter in my book where I say a particular child was trying to fly from the stairs like Superman, and he fell down the stairs, and they would all laugh because at some point they have all attempted. Yes, they've all tried to be like Superman. Yes, so we use stories to make it interesting to them, and little by little the knowledge seeps in. Then for those in secondary school, we have a more broader curriculum that we used to teach them. And then, of course, for teachers, I use case studies to break it down, case studies of an incident that can happen in a school, help them to bring out lessons, and then now teach about it. So when we do this, what happens is they are able to pick up this knowledge. So training is so important. You cannot overemphasize training. So the children need to learn, the teachers need to learn, even the parents. And that's why when we have our school safety summit, we don't just restrict it to just educators. We allow parents to also come in because they also need this knowledge. So training is really fundamental. And then, of course, when you get knowledge, I always say after getting knowledge, you must look for opportunities to practice. So now I've said you need to have family safety meetings and all that. After you've had your family safety meetings and say, for example, this week, what you learned was, or what you taught the children was what to do in a fire situation. And you told them that if for example, there's fire in this house and then there is smoke, what you're supposed to do is go down low and crawl out. Then there should be a day you should do a simulation. There is smoke, what should you do? And you need to see them physically go down on their knees and simulate crawling. Because what I have seen, because I worked in aviation for over 7 years before I stepped out of aviation, and I saw the importance of drills. When you practice something, it has a way of sticking. because you have physically interacted with that knowledge, the day you need that knowledge, it will bubble to the top of your mind. So it's really important that as much as we get training, we must create opportunities for rehearsal, for practice to happen, so that people can interact with that scenario in real time. That's why you would go to certain organizations and they would do a fire drill. So the fire alarm goes, because they want to see how everybody would react and the time frame. So that if people are not reacting as they should, they would identify areas for new learning. So please, parents listening, teachers listening, this can also be incorporated at home or in school. After training, create opportunities for drills so that your learners can practice how to behave in that situation.
Thank you for that. You're very right about the simulations. So in school, when we started our fire drills, it used to take us about 15 to 20 minutes to have everyone gathered together. And then we'll say, look, if it's taking us this time for everyone to be out, then they would have been dead. So we worked on it. And then we found out that gradually it was reducing. It was getting to 10 minutes, was getting to 8 minutes. And then before, within 2 minutes, 3 minutes, everybody's out, all the classes, all the laboratories, everywhere is empty because they've all begun. So it's very important that, yes, the simulations, the rehearsals do take place. So at home, what are the safety measures? What are the things we need to think about? So you've talked about the issue of molestations. I hope parents are taking notes of this. Molestation, talking about that with children. We've talked a bit about substance. You've talked about fire. What are the other things that we need to look at, or are just those the main three that we need to be aware of to talk about with?
Okay. So there's also road safety.
Road safety.
There's road safety, yes. Children need to know what is expected of them on the roads. There is also bullying, most especially cyberbullying. In fact, both the physical bullying and the cyberbullying. Teach children not to respond to it, but they should gather evidence. So they are not supposed to respond to the person, but gather evidence, because many times it's the evidence that can be used to build a case. So road safety, bullying, preventing abduction, because I don't know, we still keep having children who are lured by biscuits and sweets. And in 2020, that should not be happening anymore. That should be something that children should have learned a long time ago. So we must teach them how to prevent abduction, right? And we should also teach them about online safety. This is so important now because almost all education has migrated online. So you need to prepare your children that there are certain risks that they might encounter when they come online. There is content risk, and content risk is where children are being exposed to content that could make them traumatized or that is not age appropriate, all this abusive and all that. That's content risk. There is contact risk, where people who are adults are trying to get through to them, but pretending like they are children. Also, it's also in contact, we also have cases of scammers who are trying to get access to the parents' financials on the devices the children are using. So we've got to ensure that you have put systems in place such that contact risk cannot happen. And then there is conduct risk, where we're talking about online bullying, sexting, and all those kinds of things, where people are trying to behave inappropriately to the children. So to manage this online risk, it's important that parents put protective software on the devices the children will be using for learning. And there are diverse protective software like Google Family Link, iOS Parental Control, QStudio, Kaspersky Safe Kids, NetNanny. There are tons of them. Then, many times when we talk about online safety, we just focus on what they will do on the mobile device, on the laptop, and we forget the environment. The environment is so important. I remember when online schooling started and I came to Instagram and I saw all sorts of pictures of children at their parent workstations with their books. You can imagine a really small child in this oversized chair and table. and I saw children on the dining table and all that. While I understand that not every home has children appropriate furniture, right? We can improvise because a child's body is not fit for the adult furniture. And so if a child is fitted to that adult furniture, at some point the child will slouch, the side will twist, because the child is not comfortable. And that could lead to posture problems in the long run, most especially if they are going to be spending hours and days in that position. So we must ensure that if we cannot get age-appropriate furniture, the ones available can be improvised. So a big chair can be fit in such a way that maybe there are throw pillows behind the child, so that, and then the laptop is elevated, so the child is not always bending, you see. So that's about furniture. Then there's also lighting. Make sure that the device is positioned in such a way that the light is not just hitting the screen and reflecting back on the face of the child, because that could also, we don't want eye issues because the child is doing online learning.
Yes, yeah.
And then, of course, we must ensure that whatever they are going to need for work is around their workspace, so that they are not over twisting, overreaching, and all that. Everything needed is just within their space, so that while we are protecting them as they use the device, the environment is also safe, and we do not have posture issues later because children are learning online.
Wow, thank you so much. That is a lot to take in there. Right there. I hope that for parents or family members that have not taken notes, they should go back, listen to this again, and get most of those websites. You were also talking about a website. I was going to call your attention to it to share with us, the one about Sunshine that you said a friend of yours wrote. So for families that might need that particular site or program for their children, please can you just share it with us again so that people can.
Okay, so just visit Instagram and type the Sunshine series, THE Sunshine series, and that's the handle that would pop up. Just reach out to them. They are quite friendly, and of course, if they are overbooked, they have opportunities to link you up to others in their network.
Thank you for that. We've heard it all from the safety check. You are indeed the safety check. We've learned so much. That was very informative. I understand that for the family, the little things we take for granted, we just expect things to run smoothly, and just those awareness, those knowledge, it does make a difference between life and death. At sometimes, even children just being able to perform CPR, to know that, okay, there is a smoke, there is a fire, they need to crawl and go underneath the smokes. Those very, very little things, they make a difference between life and death. My sister went on a holiday in Spain, and just before that, every summer in England, during swimming lessons, the lessons are more concentrated on safety measures. I always think it's such a bore. Why do I need to learn how to dive in to save someone? Why do I have to learn how to float and everything? And she was swimming, and I think she fell off the boat or something, and she just remembered the skills, all the rehearsals that she needed to float facing up so that she could breathe easily and all of that. And before they found out, people were disembarking, and I know someone is missing, and then they had to go back, but she was able to stay afloat till rescue came, and she was so those little things that we take for granted, I think it's high time that we go back, and as a family we begin to walk through all of this. And like the ones you've just spoken about, molestations, children being raped within their own homes, by uncles in their house, by brothers, by very close family members, just having sitting them down and talking through this kind of talks makes that difference and prepares those children and keeps them safe. I hope parents will take this on board. I pray that even as we are praying so much and we believe very much in God, we should make use, as you've said, the wisdom God has made available for us all. Safety check, this has been fantastic. So just before we leave, because we are getting to the end of this session, is there anything you would like to share with us, or parting words as we go close?
Okay, so I'm going to say that Personal responsibility is very important, most especially at this time. So take personal responsibility for your safety, because for many of us, you are the one providing light in your house, you are the one
Yes.
providing water, you are even the one paying for security. So why
Yes.
should you outsource your safety to someone else?
One else.
You should not outsource your safety. Get information, spread information to with others, advocate for right practices, and take action.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. It's such a pleasure to have you on board. We can't wait for when even before the physical school resumes, we would love you to have training sessions with us, with our parents, with our school, because we do need this. And in this is a season where we all need to be very, very, very safe, and safety conscious being the top of our priority in this season. So we would love to do more with you, and we hope that when we call you another time, you'll be willing to join us at Supreme. Thank you so much for making our time. We've learned so much from you, and parents, I hope you've all learned a lot. Friends of Supreme, well done to all of you. I remain your host, Olubukola Adewoye. See you next week at 5 o'clock on Friday for another interesting session